If consumers don't want it, then we've missed the mark in a way that I can't quite understand. Every business says that execution is a priority. For us, it's make or break because we are growing and scaling at a rate that is exceptional. And so we have to be disciplined. We have to plan our work. We have to gate our moves.
5,000 doors in 7 months, and he's still holding back growth. He'll be at 30,000 doors within the next 6 months. Richard from Wip is one of the smartest operators I've ever interviewed. Here's a guy who started at Bain, at Amex, and now finds himself selling an entirely new category into retail doors. This is a great interview. We talk about how to build a team and actually interview. Richard gives us some unconventional words of wisdom on how to hire. We talk about how product wins, how you've got to spend a lot of time and energy. When the opportunity is really, really big, you can't just go in and bootstrap it. You actually have to raise money and you have to develop the product the right way. And Richard walks us through his thinking on how he goes about building product market fit. We talk about the pre-launch work. He's only been in market 7 months, but boy, so much work went into leading up to the launch to make sure it was a successful launch. This is a really, really good interview. Richard has a very concrete, focused perspective, a ton of wisdom here. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Richard Wip. Richard, welcome to What to Do Next. Thank you for coming on. It's really an honor to have you on here.
Well, thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat today.
Before we get into the nitty gritty of building the business, running it, and some of those key moments, just give us maybe a little bit of an overview, quick highlights, how Wip started, where it is today.
Wip started through an understanding that pouches are a generational transformation of how people can consume things effectively and with a lot of enjoyment. And so there was a company named TJP that was making pouches in a different category. They were making arguably the best nicotine pouches in the world. But the team running it saw that pouches were taking off, being adopted with ubiquity. And yet caffeine and energy was a huge industry and people wanted better ways to consume it. So they created the initial formulation. They spent 2+ years on it before I joined, and I joined to make sure that our pouches got in as many mouths as possible. And I joined in 2024, and we launched Wip in June of 2025.
Cool. And where are you guys at today in terms of size, growth, anything you're willing to share there?
Yeah, I mean, we are just over 7 months in, and the best news is that when people try it, they like it, they buy it, and they buy it again. So we're in 7 months into a journey of what we hope is a transformational product and category. We've seen great signs that people love it. So we're in about 5,000 retail doors right now. We have great retail partners. We're online. We're on our website. We're on Amazon. We're on GoPuff, we're on Walmart.com, and we're motoring. We'll be in north of 30,000 doors this year.
Wow. And you launched 7 months ago.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to talk about that. Break that down. What kind of pre-work did you do before the launch? How do you think about a launch? Like, you clearly didn't launch 7 months ago if you have 5,000 doors. There was a lot of work before, behind the scenes. How do you think about launching?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So before I joined, there was actually a pilot launch that was done under a different banner, and that was called LFGO. And really wanted to make sure that there was as much product market fit as we imagined there to be. And so there was a good team that did that was online only, but understood that consumers had an openness and an interest to the product. We then did a ton of consumer insights work, made big investments there to understand who our consumer was, who would consider it. Fortunately, a shocking percentage of folks are open to it, but how and why they would use their product. And that then let us lay out a really ambitious go-to-market plan. But truthfully, like 5,000 doors is good. I'm certainly happy with it. Our goal in this first 6 months, though, was not to fully gas all of our distribution, but really to better understand how we sell the product, how we help retailers make money with it, and how we can get consumers to understand it. So the 5,000 doors that's good. You ain't seen nothing yet, but that's really just because our product sells so well at retail because people just love the product.
It sounds expensive. This certainly does not feel, I mean, we've had a lot of guests on this, who give us the bootstrap story. This is not that. How do you think about when to really invest in a category? I mean, you're effectively creating a category here, and make these upfront investments, and when not to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the good news is sort of like if we take a step back, the category is enormous. So caffeine and energy, it's $190 billion. And I don't think that's including sodas and such. So there's just a lot. 85% of Americans, I think, consume caffeine daily. And there's yet unmet needs within the category. So people want something a lot better than what they're getting. And we've got deep confidence that our product delivers exceptionally well on that. So with that, that's sort of like foundational. Big market, breakthrough product, sort of this generational shift and adoption of the pouch format lets us sort of like stand on some good footing. So we're really, as you mentioned the word category creation, we're not just yet another of a product within a category sitting on a shelf. In order to pull this off, and I think we've got every reason to believe we do, that within 3 years, we'll start to create a global category for consumers to consume caffeine and energy. That's not small potatoes work. And so that requires an approach to lay that out, but we've gated it. So how do we, right now, the most important metric for us right now is our velocity at retail. And we can see with our retail partners that we drive great velocity there. And that's ultimately very investable. So we've really tried to gate the approach to this. With each learning within new insight, it opens up further the appetite to spend more and invest more in order to do something that's pretty audacious, pretty ballsy.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the president of Highbeam. But before that, I built a brand called David's Tea from 0 to 200 million in sales, and I took it public on the NASDAQ. Highbeam is a banking and cash management platform for consumer brands. It's the bank I wish I had when I was building David's Tea. We'll turn banking from a cost center for you today into a profit center for you tomorrow. We'll make you better cash back on ad spend. We'll maximize your yield on idle working capital through daily automated sweeps. And we have a host of AI-powered tools to save you a boatload of time. Check us out at highbeam.com and let's talk. If I'm listening to this and I think that I have a new format, new category, entirely new spin on consumption of an existing massive market like caffeine, what would you tell me now, having gone through it? Do I go out and raise millions of dollars, do market studies, and before I've even sold a pouch, or how would you approach it?
Well, I mean, I do think that like I'm blessed for having sort of found myself in what I think is a pretty unique situation. And so extrapolating this for other people might be a little bit challenging. So, the business was 2.5 years in development before I joined. And so they were able to sort of like see, like pouches weren't new. They knew that pouches were new to this category and product wins. So the bold decision before I came was to put millions of dollars into a proprietary formulation and application within a pouch that nobody had seen within this category. But that was like that decision was made easier because pouches were being adopted at a remarkable pace. Some statistics indicate that 1 in 10 American adults have tried a nicotine pouch. Like this pouch adoption had been really sort of remarkable. And so that application, that openness to caffeine within the pouch world was provided a toehold for them to make a big bet there. And then every decision since then has been confirming and expanding our expectations, which allowed for increased, investments. I think your question of, what do people in other categories do? I think you don't just make one big bet on a new idea. I always like to look for patterns. And so my decision to take this role on, I saw that there were other takes on what we were doing from people who were at it earlier. There were people that were trying different permutations of it. And that is like confirms that there's something here. I don't think they're doing as, their take isn't as good as ours, but, pattern sorting is good. So for new categories, new opportunities, what patterns could you find external to you to reinforce and build your confidence that you're actually onto something.
Right. No competition, no one else trying to go after the opportunity is almost a bad sign.
I mean, I think so. I mean, like that we want to win, and we're going to win. The fact that some others are sort of, playing in the same sandbox, I'm undaunted by that, and I find it to be sort of affirming that we're onto something.
You mentioned product wins. If I think about this right, what you really mean there is format wins.
Well, sort of. I mean, format, but format doesn't sort of determine the quality of the product. So the format is good, but in our case, whether there's efficacy of the product, that people get the sort of the outcome that they wanted from it is important. If you don't get that, then nobody's just, if it tastes good, then that's it. Then put a lollipop in your mouth. But first is efficacy. Does it actually work? And so we do that. We've got a strength akin to a cup of coffee or akin to an energy drink within one pouch. People feel the outcome they want when they take that. But then the other is it delightful? Is it fun? Does it, do you like having this? Do you like doing it? This isn't medicine. It should be something that you enjoy doing and hopefully you want to do every day and throughout the day. And so that's what, do you exceed consumers' expectations on efficacy and enjoyment? And then how do you keep moving that goalpost?
It was really interesting when I asked you at the start of this conversation to sort of tell me where you're at now. Most people answer that question like, oh, we're doing X dollars in revenue and we're growing at this rate. And you answered it very customer centric. You said the customer's trying the product, they're enjoying the product, they're talking about the product, and they're buying it again. Some version of that. What would you have done if that wasn't the case?
Taking a deep breath like I just did. We have a really good R&D team. So we would have to go back, like we would have pulled back, probably spend on nearly everything else and gotten the product right. So, we're not a marketing business. We're not a sales business. We are an energy and a pouch business. And if we can't do that, then all of the supporting functions are spinning their wheels until that gets right. So we'd slow the bus way down. We'd go back to the product and we'd nail it. The good news is we'd had a lot of reps and we had a lot of confidence in that. We did that initial pilot launch. We did in-home use tests. We did comparative tests against competitors. We were fortunate to have the capital to be able to have a lot of confidence in the product when we launched. But if and sometimes you're wrong, sometimes all of your indicators say, are green lights, and then you find out that the traffic signal was flawed. And so if that was the case, we would have just halted. We would have just said, pull back, let's get it right. Because ultimately, we see this with some competitors who are trying to operate in our space. They get distribution, they get like an initial velocity at retail, and then it dies down. And that's just because the consumers don't like the product. So, if people don't like it, then what the heck are we doing here?
It sort of feels like this is where the benefit of your background, having worked at Bain, at Amex, Bonobos, you helped launch Jewel, like you've been involved with big companies and big projects. You're taking the right steps in order to get as much assurance and the proper feedback loop to know that you're on the right track, which of course takes money. It's not the typical entrepreneurial way of being, somewhat naive, venturing in perhaps a little bit ahead of your skis. I mean, this seems like a situation where your experience has really helped you know how to launch a product properly that has enormous scale potential. Where has that corporate experience perhaps not been as helpful that you find in this journey?
Well, this isn't a wandering forward startup where we sort of like happen into product market fit. Like we have all of the confidence in the world of it and have been able to build out like an exceptional all-star team. The great long-term news is that we see broad adoption of our product. We index really high around hospitals, around truck stops and travel centers. Our highest performing affiliate on TikTok is a female athlete. We index really high around college campuses. We have a bounty of choice. Um, the hard part for us now is to force focus upon ourselves because we actually are still a small business. And so, I'm accustomed to, step change growth. I've worked in big organizations, but companies that have a slower growth, a smaller team, and tighter budgets are forced into either because their product only had additional adoption by a narrow audience, or they just didn't have the capacity to um, to focus on certain things. We've sort of have broad adoption, and so I think that that's been somewhat challenging from a team and probably from a leadership standpoint of creating a little bit of not focus based on market potential, but around our ability to execute. And it's exciting to see, the broad applicability of our product. But I probably could see how, the company next year could realize that. But that small scrum model is just a different headspace that we've sort of I found myself having to force ourselves into than organically be there.
A lot of entrepreneurs don't force themselves into that focus. You're basically describing unlimited potential, but having to stay in one lane until you have enough resources to really take advantage, seize the opportunities, all of the opportunities at hand. Most entrepreneurs don't do that. They often will just spread quite thin across many initiatives, hang on by a thread in every one, and hope that they eventually figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I just keep saying focus is our friend. That's like one of the mantras that we sort of rally around every Monday all hands meeting is, what are we focusing on right now? And laying the fundamentals of like, what is our plan? You can't solve a problem unless you own the problem. So what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is our plan to do it? Did we do what we were going to say? And did what we do what we wanted it to? And so being really tight on identifying that, at Bain, there was something called answer first, which is really just more like hypothesis based working. And here we're doing the same thing. So, okay, we want to get increased velocity at a given, retailer. Well, okay, now we know what the problem is. What are we going to do it? And so it's really just that discipline around execution and celebrating those wins, which each one maybe doesn't feel Herculean, but that replicability of doing those things is actually what's going to move this along even faster.
So to do that, you got to say no to a lot of things.
Yeah.
How do you think about saying no?
Well, it's not my favorite word, but I'm trying to, increase my usage of it. So before we get to function, what are our overall business imperatives? And for a business of our stage and the rate of the growth, we've done like a rough pass at our yearly goals, but really there's so much that's going to change between March when we're speaking now and the end of the year. And so we really are working in like, we did a first half, but then we are dialing into 2-month sprints. That helps on capital deployment to ensure that it's being deployed wisely, prudently, and for the business size and scale that we have. It also helps with the team that we have because the organization is organic and it keeps evolving, both by adding new people and roles changing. And so how do we plan within a time horizon that is appropriate and that we don't spend too much time on something that's going to be somewhat irrelevant in 7 months from now, doubling our duration of time in existence? We're going to be a different business. We should have an eye toward it, but we need to plan and execute within the horizon we have. Doing that allows us to say no. You can usually think in a 2-month integer on whether something's a good fit or not. There's some things obviously in the fall that we're already starting to plan because those are necessary requirements, but anything sort of discretionary, you can see within 2 months.
You mentioned it's a generational transformation. Was there a moment when you realized that would be the case?
So when I learned about the business, they sent me some product. I took it out to the beach with some friends. And I actually I hadn't tried it yet. So I had like a sample box and unboxed it at a beach house with some friends. And these are largely guys in their late 30s, their 40s. And they all started popping them open, and especially, late afternoon, we're putting pouches in their mouth and in the mornings too. And then there's we ordered some booze. And so there's a 24-year-old liquor delivery guy who came by. Somebody said, "Oh, give him one of those pouches." So I handed him the can, and he knew just what to do with it. And he popped it open, took one out, put it in, waited like 2 or 3 seconds like this. And he said, "Fuck yeah." And then he levitated as he walked out the door. And in that moment, I will remember that forever. I was like, this is it. This is like from, across generations, the ease of understanding what the product was, the problem we're solving, the fun people have with it. It was like, this is it. This is my next move.
So that's really interesting, because in my prep notes, I wanted to ask you all about what it's like to create a category, anticipating that it's really, really hard to educate and to get people to understand what it is, because no one's ever had a caffeine pouch before. But what you're telling me is, what really struck you is how intuitive it was to use it and the immediate impact of the product on their lives.
Yeah. I mean, and people don't even need to have used a nicotine pouch to get it. We did broad scale survey work. The purchase intent for people, whether they had tried a nicotine pouch before or not, was staggeringly high. Higher general population caffeine consumers, including those who don't drink energy drinks, was breathtaking. It was higher than penetration of energy drinks. So people are more open to our product than they are to an energy drink.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's a lot of trust in our product because the ingredients are super simple. There's not any, complicating stimulants. There's no dyes. It's just a really straightforward product. It's a delivery system that people have a lot of confidence in. And I think that for us ourselves, we're just made with at the highest standard. Each batch is independently tested. We are fully compliant in every regard. We're really transparent on the amount of caffeine. There's just no sneaky maneuvers with our product. And people want something better. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people developing new things create complicated solutions to wide scale wants. But I think the more simple the solution, the more elegant the answer, the easier it is for people to get.
So a lot went right. What went wrong?
What went wrong? We certainly passed the cocktail party test, where you get to tell people where you work and it's exciting and it sounds sexy and fun to say. The reality of it is that it's a really hard job, even for people who it's a dream job for, because there's the urgency of today. There's the planning, over the next 2 months, and the planning for the future, making sure that you're creating the structure and architecture of the business that can scale into a global brand at a very fast pace. And finding people that can do those two things concurrently is really tough. And so, yeah, there's been some functions that we've hired people with amazing careers where it's just been a mismatch, not because they're not talented, but because we require a certain style of working to kind of pull off what we're doing here. And so that's been probably one of the things that has been hardest, because I always say that it's such an honor for people to spend a chapter of their career in my organizations working with me. And when it doesn't work out, I really feel for them. I have a lot of empathy and gratitude for it, but need to do what's right for us as well.
Well, let's dig in there. I mean, because you've worked for some of the best organizations in the world, in Amex and Bain. What did you learn about those cultures that you've brought to Wip, and what have you done differently in terms of how you think about who the right people are for this company?
I think that a few companies, that there's threads that I try to carry forward, that that Amex in my early days was building a brand rooted in data, that at Bain that the smartest, hardest working people are the most junior, and they actually set the culture for the organization. Guilt was an ambitiously scaled organization with the highest bar of entrepreneurs. At Bonobos, there was a spirit of the brand that lived throughout the organization. There's something called the ninjas there. So each organization had really clear things about it that I carried forward. I think we've done a very good job of is people who have an entrepreneurialism within themselves, that understand the vision of what we're trying to do, and especially those that are thriving here, that I call it like seeping or bleeding into things, that people are they are the best in the business at something, and they're smart enough to figure something out, and they know where to draw the line after that. And I think that's been really great to see. Our head of e-commerce is terrific. She's leaned in on podcasts and other things that weren't a part of her world, but she's ambitious on behalf of the business, not just her career. I want her to career develop and for her to, but she is looking through the lens of, what needs to be done, how to move the business forward. And I think that's been great to see.
How do you know when to draw the line? I mean, you're like, I want smart, capable employees who can run a function responsibly, can take initiative above and beyond what I've asked them to do. But then you said know where to draw the line.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is like, I think for the right people, they want to keep doing and they'll keep going. It's really their own self-awareness of, and I think that's the gating thing, is making sure that you hire people with self-awareness. So what are you the best in the world at? What can you cover? And then what should somebody else take the reins on? We have a new head of sales, and he's the best. He is extraordinary. He doesn't need to solve all of the world's problems. And so I'm all, to give people my confidence in them out of the gate. Anyone who's ambitious is trying to, they want to make sure that they start off well and they're seen well. I don't need everyone to solve all of the problems. So we've got enough people. So raise your hand and say, here's where I need help. Here's where I don't have enough experience. Here's where my bandwidth is going to be overly constrained. And to celebrate those things as much as you celebrate the wins, you celebrate people leaning in and doing things. I always try to give recognition for when people know when they're at their capacity, or they need support in some way.
When I was building David's to you, I really put an emphasis on self-awareness, because otherwise I find that it was the number one factor. If you had a lot of people who are self-aware, you avoided some of the political pitfalls that can often come in organizations. You guys are scaling really quickly now, it seems, and I imagine you're doing a lot of hiring. Is there anything you think about in terms of, as this thing, you mentioned being a totally different company 6 months from now, in terms of how you prevent some of the perhaps not so great sides of the Amexes and the Bains and some of the larger organizations you've been at?
I was speaking with a candidate today, and I think I'm getting better at turning interviews into conversations. And I think interviews are you're testing people for the wrong skills in the way that many of them are architected. So, I think that I was really good at interviewing back in the day, because it was really like improv acting. You learn the game that you knew your like go-to answers. You sort of like knew the intimation of when you said something. I could anticipate the way people would respond to some of my lines. But that is like an imbecilic way to gauge whether somebody is good for a certain function, because you're really testing your ability to interview. And I'm not, interviewing people to be podcast guests. So maybe I am, but right now we're not. So I really am trying to reframe and to get all of our hiring managers to reframe interviews into conversations, and to acknowledge that there's the right role for everyone, and let's problem solve this conversation into figuring out if this is the right opportunity for you and why, and then we'll figure out the same thing. There's a little bit of co-creation through the interview process, and to get at the root of the matter. What do we need today? What are we going to need in the future? Is this going to be interesting to you? Do you have the skills for it? Instead of what I view as sort of like a different approach to interviewing.
That's super interesting. So you're almost, you view it as like a joint exploration of whether this is the right, whether we're thinking about the role the right way and whether it's the right role for you.
Yeah, and especially I see this with like more junior people that I have a chance to speak with. They're like often nervous,
Right.
and it's like, okay, like let's just like this is all going to be fine. Like whether you get this job or not, like let's just all take a deep breath and like know that it's going to be okay. Let's just like figure out, what do you like to do? What do you think you're really good at? Let's just like let's get some combo going. Here's the nature of a job. Like, tell me why that seems interesting or not to you. What would be fun? What would be a chafe? And it's not an exercise to disarm, but to get to the root of who somebody is. I try to tell people when they're within a company, like, it's okay for this role to be a mismatch, because there is a great role for you. And so we can either fix the role, find another one for you, or coach you into, allow you the time to find something else. I want everyone to have a great, chapter of their career, whether it's with us or if it needs to be elsewhere. But you need to let people feel comfortable having that conversation.
That works well when you're growing fast. And you have a lot of open roles. We saw this at David Segal. We were opening stores, so there was always room to move people around, mostly vertically. Like, oh, you're a store manager, we'll make you a district manager. How do you think about, maybe it's premature for you at Whip, it probably is, it's long premature, but maybe you've seen it in some of your other experiences.
I think that, again, going back to, what problem are we trying to solve? Like, not everyone is aspiring to reach the C-suite. So what some people want to learn, some people want to have more exposure to something. So, an understanding of what people's career objectives are. Not every aspect of career growth is a promotion. Not every aspect is even managing more functions, or some of it can be, presenting more to the company. Some of it, there's always opportunities, no matter the role, the person, in order for them to feel like they're getting more fulfillment out of their role. And so I think that's like the starting point. But then when you reach capacity, I think having some forward looking to, where people might need to look elsewhere. And that is okay. We want people to be here as long as they want to be, and as long as there's a good fit. If somebody's exceptional, then we should celebrate when they've made a good accomplishment, and then it's time for them to go elsewhere. But, we're not pushing people out, but try to maximize what we can offer them.
Richard, 5,000 doors, 7 months, incredible. You want to go from 5,000 to 30,000 in short order. Give me the sort of pre-mortem on why this doesn't work.
David, you're a doomsdayer, and that's just not my headspace.
I'm far from a doomsdayer, but
I'm giving you a little why this doesn't work. I think that it means that we misread every cue thus far. So if consumers don't want it, then we've missed the mark in a way that I can't quite understand. I think, every business says that execution is a priority. For us, it's sort of make or break, because we are growing and scaling at a rate that is exceptional. And so we have to be disciplined. We have to plan our work. We have to gate, our moves. You can feel it, when you've let the reins out too far and you don't feel like what is happening. And so ultimately, this is going to be not just whether we executed, but whether we executed what we intended to, and that we adjusted course early enough to sort of either capture the wind in our sails that we didn't anticipate, or that we sort of like found some headwinds that we didn't anticipate, but we sort of adjusted course appropriately. But that sort of like a finger on a pulse, the controls in place and the planfulness of our work is going to be determinative.
Everybody wants to keep that narrow focus, but there's too many shiny objects, especially when you have the kind of product market fit and excitement you have in your business right now. What's a good example of where you've had to be like, okay, this is a huge opportunity, but we're not going to do it? Where have you had to make those trade-offs?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a lineup of international distributors who want to carry our product right now. And we're going to do that. We're going to start moving internationally by the end of the year. But we don't have infinite resources from headcount or dollars. And so we've really focused on creating density of revenue in certain markets with certain retailers, a deep understanding of how and why we can effectuate velocity and revenue, how we connect with consumers. So that would be like a fun move. I'd love to go to the UK, to the EU, where we've got a lot of interest. We've got Singapore, we have South Korea, like the list is long. Brazil, I was just in Brazil for New Year's. There's just a great distributor in Brazil that wants to carry our product. I'd love an excuse to go to Brazil, but it would be very distracting from us right now.
What do most people get wrong about wholesale?
I think that getting the distributor, getting the retailer is the win, and sort of letting the product die on the shelf. So that is, we 5,000 doors. We could have been in a lot more than that, but I wanted to make sure that we were pulling through velocity and that we knew what was happening. The last thing I want is for product to sit at a distributor or on a shelf. I see a lot of folks with early stage businesses, and I get it. They should celebrate getting those big box retailers, and they're fun posts when they put their, take a photo of themselves with their product there. But if the product doesn't move, then you're going to have a hard time selling it back in if it's pulled.
What about the cash? I mean, we often see this at High Beam. We've talked about 1,000 brands in the past year, and those playing the wholesale game are often victims of the cash conversion cycle. How have you guys thought about that?
Well, right now, our old controller when I was at Jewel is helping lead our finance right now. And so I've got an experienced partner there in cash management and how we do that through not just, wholesalers, but trade accruals and all of that. So I think that for folks who are a little bit new to the retail game, there's a lot of folks, and I'm sure High Beam has got, you've got plenty of good resources for folks to lean on. And so whether at High Beam or through your network, the finance function is core to, the economics and the scalability of this. So make sure that you turn to folks that know the guts of the tiered system to make sure that you're playing the game right.
And on the sales side, what are the main levers you guys find work when something isn't moving at the velocity you need it to?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is our product is that our retailers make great margin. So we are successful on the shoulders of retailers. So we need this business to sell, and for retailers to feel the pull from consumers and the people that walk through their doors. We have the best head of retail marketing on the team. Tanya, she worked with me before. She sort of has had the dream career for somebody in our space. She was at GoPro, Jewel, Red Bull, back to Jewel. She just knows, she knows in-store marketing, shopper marketing. And so we have a great team. And so we partner really well with retailers on that.
And when you go into that, you mentioned making sure the retailers make a lot of money on the product. Will you overshoot on the margin they typically get on purpose? Like, how do you approach that?
There's a good conversation. We want to make sure that we understand what their goals are, and then we can help, the buyer and who owns that part of the store meets their goals. But ultimately, that person is looking through the lens. They've got their spreadsheets, they have their margin goals. Ultimately, this is rolling up into who's walking into the door, and are they buying something, and what's the basket and the ring. I think that we help, the buyers meet their individual goals, but we really are solving a need at scale for the consumer that walks into these doors. There's huge appetite for the product. We're an incremental ring. And so that's great. We've got a good margin to help accomplish that.
And do you insist on being right at impulse?
We do really well there. So whether we insist it or not, it's the smartest place to place us.
I mean, when you showed up the first time, it's not like these people are sitting there waiting for you and have this empty, I mean, that's some of the most valuable real estate in these stores. So what were those early conversations like before obviously you had the weight of the market saying this is working?
So we were really lucky to have some early retailers who were willing to make a move with us. I do think that having launched in and helped run Jewel in those early growth years, I've got a deep understanding of, of that part of the store, of that counter, that margin per square inch. And the size and scale of this opportunity is very similar, if not larger. And because of that, I can have a conversation and understand, and I have all of the conviction in the world that we're going to do just the same or bigger. And so, but we were really lucky to get off-cycle placements with retailers, with counter placements, build exceptional data that proved and validates the velocity that we knew would happen, but the proof point data. And now the conversations are just much different. We've got national chains, we've got super regionals, we've got independents, and time again, we just like haul. Consumers just love the product. They love trying it. They buy it again. Great velocities.
Did anyone say to you, it looks a lot like Zyn?
I think the shape is somewhat similar, but people love our branding. It looks cool as merch. People wear it, people show it, people share it. But the form factor isn't bad in that people know that there's a pouch inside. But we also do have trial packs that are 3 count that just look different. And so we've got different ways to show up in store. But I think that, yeah, it's shorthand. There might be a pouch inside is a good thing.
Partnering with a clothing brand, Bossy, and coming up with cool sweatshirts like the one you're wearing right now, some might say, hey, maybe that's a no for a brand that's trying to focus and go from 5,000 doors to 30,000 doors. What made that crossover to the yes column for you?
The good news is our product helps people do cool, fun stuff. And so we want to celebrate the things that people are able to do in their lives with a bit more energy. And a lot of these, our merch brands, our merch collaborations, and even we have a good merch program where we hand out a bunch of branded merch. People just love wearing it. Like it feels like a streetwear brand. And that's cool. So Bossy was a relationship that a guy, Will Campbell, helped introduce us to, and he helped architect that relationship. Bossy has consumers that are, athletes. They're in the music and nightlife world. All of those are great fertile grounds for us to have product use cases. And so it isn't just, fashion. It's like, who are those consumers? How do we intercept them? And then really, we've got walking billboards all over the place of people wearing the Wip brand in a way that I haven't seen any energy brand pull off. And it's, and it's fun. It gets people talking.
Super interesting. We spent most of this conversation with you focusing on the product and talking about how critical it is to get the product right. But now you're starting to see Wip become a lifestyle brand with a community. Where for you, was that something you saw right on day one? Or was there a moment where you started to realize, wow, we nailed the product so well that this can be more than that? And then how did you approach that and think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so energy products require a brand. Well, every business has a brand, but energy products are highly branded products. There's a reason somebody goes to the cooler at a convenience store and picks a Red Bull or a Monster. If you ask people, a lot of people will have consumed only one and never tasted the other. So it's not product, it's brand. And so what is our brand? We know that we need one. We know that the emotional aspect of brand within the energy world is exceptionally important. And we wanted to build something that reflected the ambition, the audacity, the positivity of who our consumer is, with people who take on, complex, interesting, full lives and give them things like merch or product that let them show off, what they're pulling off.
Richard, really appreciate it. I know we're running up on time here. We have a little lightning round we love to do here. What's a decision you're wrestling with right now?
What flavors we should launch before mid-year? What do you want? What's your next What's your choice for a next Whip flavor?
I haven't tried the product. I have to. After this conversation, I'm definitely going to. And you've done a really good job showing it on camera. So I'm like, it's working. I mean, is there a mint? That would be the first one my mind even goes to. Yeah.
What, yeah.
I would probably try that one first. New flavors. Well, actually, how many flavors do you have and how do you think about SKUs? Like, are you seeing it more as a fashion brand that launches constant flavors, or, I mean, how do you think about core versus seasonal?
So we had 4 core flavors. We've introduced 2 more. The blue raspberry that we just launched, somebody told me that it slaps, which I hear is a good thing. So I think blue raspberry might be an emerging core flavor. We've got a great R&D team. We know that flavor is important. Any flavor we will launch, we need it to be the best possible. We're going to just see what consumer response is, and we can always fold things into core. But you're going to see sort of a cycle of flavors that come out.
So you'll launch seasonal in order to keep updating core and make sure you've got the right
Exactly.
trend. It's less about seasonal pops where you get it for a period of time and then wait for it to come back the next year. It's more about using as a limited edition to sort of keep core as productive as it can be over time.
Exactly. I think you might see something around the 4th of July that'll feel like summer, but maybe it stays year round.
Every founder creating a new category should.
Every founder creating a new category should ask for as much help as you can get from people you trust and respect. One of the best things that I have going right now is my board is amazing. Our board advisors are amazing. I have a mentor who happened to have invested. He spends so much time with me. So I don't feel like I'm paddling alone. That's a good thing.
Is there a world where you think you could have done this without raising the kind of money you guys did?
No. It's just like it would have taken too long and somebody would have taken the opportunity. And we're so far ahead of everyone else because of that it just would have been a different swing and it would have been a different game.
What's one tool system you couldn't run your business without?
Oh, I hate it, but we use Slack all day and I need it. So that's what we need. That's what we use. I don't hate Slack. I just hate how much we use it.
Richard, thank you so much. It's been amazing. Wip is on fire. Congratulations. It's really impressive. I mean, you guys almost feels like an overnight success, even though I know so much behind the scenes before the launch took place to make sure you nailed the product. But really appreciate you coming on. Learned a ton. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, David.